Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is our spring quarter sustainability story. So we're very excited to have Julia Deák Sandler with us today and Madeline Schroeder from UW Recycling. So Julia will start off by talking to us about ditching the diapers for environmental justice. So we're excited to hear from Julia. And then that will be followed by Madeline telling us a little bit about the university's waste sorting habits and learning about what a recent waste audit found at UW. And then if people have questions, we'll do questions at the end. So feel free to just ask your questions in the chat, and then we'll be monitoring the chat box. So we'll kind of have a moderated discussion at the end. So feel free at any time to put your questions in the chat, and then we'll go over those at the end. So I will let Julia kick it off. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Deák Sandler, and I am a one-time lecturer at the University of Washington in the International and English Language programs, and more recently with my blog project, Rethink Green, and now actually I work at 3 Degrees, which is a sustainability organization. But let me go ahead and share my screen here so we can... Awesome. Yeah, so today I'm here to talk about this project called Ditch the Diapers, and it has some great connections to environmental justice, so that's very good, and I think a great connection. So this was a project funded by the Seattle Public Utilities Waste-Free Communities Matching Grant, and I partnered up with Diaper Stork, which is a cloth diaper company, and this talk, however, I want to stress is not about cloth diapers. That's kind of what people assume most of the time, but it's going to be more about even more resilient strategies for avoiding diaper use. So the motivation for this project was when we looked at, what is in the waste stream for the city of Seattle, diapers were one of the biggest thing. And I think it was like food waste, pet waste, and then diapers at about 8,500 tons per year just from Seattle. So that is a huge amount. And of course, sounds like a product that's very hard to avoid. But my own experience as a mom and Carrie, the owner of Diaper Stork, we both had tried elimination communication and some different things with our kids, as well as potty training at an earlier age. And we just thought this would be such a great, thing to try because there really are so few options in terms of keeping diapers out of the waste stream. So as you can see, this is kind of our poster, and the purpose of the project was how to teach babies to stay dry by age 2. And this idea of reclaiming lost skills, that for many years, or for most of human history, kids didn't wear diapers, or they got out of whatever diaper type things they were in by age 2 for sure. And these days it's getting later and later. So the social justice part of this is that there's a huge amount of diaper need. So you hear all the time from organizations like Westside Baby, please donate diapers, and people buy all these Huggies, as a charity thing to provide for families that really have a hard time avoiding these convenience products. And this is just a more recent thing from their website that says this is the highest rate of diaper need the community's ever seen. You can see it was from last month. So it really is a huge problem. And this was a great opportunity, I thought, to try to bring tools to these communities that are experiencing so much need and experiencing all the trash that comes with diapers if they're not sure how to avoid them. So my talk today, we're just gonna, we already did this kind of overview of the waste, and then I want to take a look back with kind of an anthropological lens of how we've used baby diapers over the years, and then talk about some different alternatives to that. So, oh, actually, let's go in a different order. Never mind. Because I think when the reactions I've had to this talk are just like everyone's mind goes to cloth diapers. So I wanted to right away sort of counteract that a little bit before we do look at the history. So in terms of resilient alternatives to diapers, you can kind of think of it with this analogy to Wonder Bread, which is the convenience product. It's great. It's awesome and very easy to use. You buy it, You use it, no problem. That's kind of where we are with disposable diapers. But of course, just like that stuff comes in a plastic bag, a disposable diaper has about the same amount of plastic as 2 plastic bottles, according to the Diaper with a Y brand. And then they've got all the paper in there and the volatile chemicals, and then they're expensive and you're throwing them in the trash with human waste a lot of times. So pretty bad for the environment, but super convenient and wonderful for living a modern hygienic life. Of course, with all the disruptions due to climate change coming our way and already here disrupting us this century, you know, some of these convenience products are sort of dangerous to rely on, because what if you can't get them? What are you going to do? So that's kind of what happened when the shelves were bare with bread. People were like, oh, I'll just buy some yeast packets and bake my own bread. That's kind of what cloth diapers are like. You still buy the cloth diapers, but you can wash them yourself, or you can use a cloth diaper company that'll pick them up and launder them for you. But what if even those are not available, or what if you can't access, you know, a washing machine? Now we're at the sourdough level of just, this is how our ancestors did it, and they baked bread just with a sourdough starter that would grow naturally. Those are that's the level of resilient alternative that I'd like to talk about today, and it's something called elimination communication, also known as diaper-free childcare, sometimes called infant potty training, but we don't really like that word for it, and just effective, timely potty training by age 2.5, which is going to save you a year of diapers or more, possibly. So basically, can we remember how to do these more resilient strategies? And if we look at what people did before diapers, of course, as many cultures as there are in the world, that's how many different solutions there were, perhaps, but there are some common threads. So, you know, for cultures such as Native American cultures that used a cradle board, they would have kind of stuffed some moss or dry materials in there to be absorbent. But it's not like the baby was just wetting all the time in there. If you have ever, you know, had a newborn baby, you know that just like all other animals who don't want to soil themselves, they will pee when you take them out of the clothes, out of the diaper. And they sell all these products these days, these little teepees to put on there so you don't get splashed in the face when you take their diaper off. If you don't, you know, discourage that with a really negative reaction, that is the natural inclination of babies. And so I would think in the cradle board, you know, when you take them out of the cradle board, then they're going to pee right away. That people would just put them where they want them to pee and then pack them back into the cradle board. Of course, you're not going to catch everything that way. You're not going to be whipping them out all the time to do that, but it's also not maybe a huge mess as you might expect. And just using these compostable materials and discarding them when they're done. Now, other cultures didn't use a cradle board. They, you know, carry the baby, and we still do a lot of baby wearing, even in Seattle now. And when you are carrying a baby against your body, you can feel everything. You can see if they're asleep. You can, you know, you can tell just how much tension they're holding and so forth. And so it's really possible to do this elimination communication where you're communicating somehow, even with a little newborn baby, about what they need, and they'll kind of let you know if they're hungry, they'll let you know if they're tired, and you can kind of rock them to sleep. And if you're paying attention, they can let you know when they need to go to the bathroom. So if they start wriggling and kicking their legs, you can take them out of the wrap, put them in a position, the usual position that they would eliminate in, and they use cueing sounds. So you can use a sound like pss, 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 or pss, and then that gets associated with urination for the baby. There are other sounds for number 2, and you know, help the baby go in the place where you want them to go, which is not all over your back, and then pack them back into your sling when you're done. So I think for that kind of culture, it's almost easier because you're in such close contact with the baby that you can, if you're practiced at it, know when they need to go and take them out and have them go in an appropriate place, away from their body, away from you, where they're not getting things dirty. In China, my understanding is that cloth diapers were never a big thing. And instead, they have these split pants. If you could see, this girl is wearing like a snowsuit with a little gap in it. And so this is the name for it up here in Chinese. And so, it allows small babies and toddlers like this girl here to be taken to the potty fully clothed and not get things all messy. And my understanding is that there's even a word that means take the baby to go potty, which is ha. I don't know the tone associated. If anyone is a Chinese speaker here, perhaps you know. And so that worked very well, for centuries. Now, how did we go from all of those different techniques for helping, families stay dry and clean to where we are today with 3-year-olds in many cases in diapers? I should mention I put the slide towards the end, but our survey of Seattle families found that on average, they don't even start, giving the child a chance to use a potty until after the second birthday on average. Some people do, but on average, it is slightly after the second birthday. And a lot of times it takes like 9 months to teach the child to actually stay dry during the day. And then nighttime takes even longer. So we're talking like almost age 3, 2 3/4 on average. So the things I was showing you before, the moss and the cradle board and the baby wearing, anthropologists think that when those were the techniques being used, babies were pretty much trained to not, soil where they shouldn't soil by like 6 to 9 months. And then when we introduced commercial cloth diapers about 200 years ago, that got a little pushed back a little bit more. So maybe between 9 to 18 months was the average of daytime dryness, where you don't really need to have that absorbent backup because the baby is just going to be able to wait till you put them on the pot or wherever is the appropriate place to go. Then in 1962, they introduced Pampers, which were the first disposable diapers. And unfortunately, there was a pediatrician who was paid by Pampers and did all this research about, why we shouldn't potty train so early. And, in all fairness, in the 1940s, there were very strict kind of child rearing methods. And so my mother says, she was like tied down with a net onto the potty and wasn't allowed to get up until she eliminated. And nobody is advocating for that kind of thing. But that's not what our ancestors were doing, I don't think. I think they were just teaching the babies from birth to stay connected to this idea of eliminating in a proper place, not in your pants. And then the natural human development took care of it. So it was not a coercive thing at all. Now, if you keep a baby in diapers from birth, it's a totally different thing. That natural learning doesn't happen. In fact, they have like almost no sensation, no idea what's happening. They don't know when they're peeing because you've sort of diaper trained them. You've told the brain, that's not important. Whatever's happening down there, mom will take care of it. Don't worry about it. And especially when you give these super driest Pampers ever, if they actually keep the baby so dry that when they pee, they don't feel wet, then they really have no idea what is even happening. And it takes a lot more work to teach them to reconnect the dots. And then if you're trying to train with pull-ups, which are also diapers, which also keep them too dry, I mean, it's very hard to potty train sometimes. So I think it was a real swing way too far in the other direction. It was a backlash against coercive potty training methods, but we went so far in the other direction that we basically don't do any potty opportunities and don't even do potty training at a developmentally appropriate age anymore, unless the child like begs for it, basically, is what a lot of parents, well, they don't want it, or they don't, I mean, how are they supposed to know what they want? They're 2 years old, right? So anyway, this is where we are today. Average age around 3 for daytime dryness. And we felt like this is not good for anyone except maybe the diaper company. It's not good for the parent. I mean, the parents sort of like the convenience, but then they have a huge headache on the other end with potty training sometimes. It's very difficult. The kids are certainly kept nice and tidy, but it can be kind of a traumatic training process on the other end. Really bad for the environment is the other thing. So we wanted to see, well, what would it be like to use these more traditional methods in Seattle in the modern day? Who's still doing this? How can we reconnect with this information? And so we talked to a lot of people, and we were really looking for that information. We thought we should talk to elders, we should talk to communities who maybe had immigrated from a more rural or third world kind of a situation more recently. And we just found kind of some really interesting things. So I'm going to go through a couple of these little quotes. So one Seattle family a woman told me after I adopted my son from China at age 1, so the boy was 1 year old, she assumed he was not potty trained because most 1-year-olds are not here. But she realized, well, hold on, he's pooping at exactly the same time every day during the dinner hour. What if I just start putting him on a potty? And she did that, and basically the boy was potty trained. She just didn't know it. And so that was quite a surprise, but it just goes to show that even a foster child or someone from an orphanage in another country is potty trained by 18 months in many parts of the world. We talked to a lot of folks in the African American community. There's research that says that African American families actually tend to potty train earlier on average, more towards that 18 to 24 month range, not into age 3. And we talked to someone up at the Home Society, Children's Home Society, who said, "Oh, my baby's father trained him by 9 months. He just always took the baby with him to the bathroom whenever he was going, gave him a chance to go, and the baby got used to it. And there you go." And that is pretty early. That is like pretty unusual. But I heard a lot of women tell me, "Oh yeah, I trained 7 kids, and they were all done by 18 months, and I would just." They told me all their strategies, let them run around outside in the backyard in the summer, and they just put 2 and 2 together. Or they told me like, "Oh, after they reach size 5, that's it. I don't mess around, and time for potty training." So they're not like waiting for the baby to say they want underwear or something. They're just going for it. The Native and Alaskan community, a woman from Kirkland told me that she's of Native Alaskan heritage, and when she heard about elimination communication, she realized, wow, this is part of our heritage that was taken from us or forgotten, just like so much other material. And doing this with her kids, it really made her feel connected to her ancestors and traditional lifestyle. Woman from Bangladesh told me, "Oh yeah, I remember my mother doing that with my little sister. She would pick her up at night, and she had kind of a container with a lot of old sari cloth, and would let the baby, do their business in that, and tuck them back in bed, keep everything clean, wash the cloths in the morning." And then a very interesting one from Sweden. This woman told me that, "Oh, my mother had us all out of diapers by 6 months. And she actually used to use a bell because really small babies have a hard time communicating much outside of crying or wriggling, but they can grab things. So apparently they would grab a bell." I was like, I've never heard that before, but just so many different ways and strategies. So what does this look like in Seattle now? You can start anytime from birth. We have families connected with us who started from birth and found that almost easier in a way because there's no diaper training to undo. Of course, they do use diapers as a backup, but their main MO is to try to give the baby a chance to pee whenever they need to go, and at really regular, predictable intervals, right upon waking, after meals, after nap time. So this video is a mom doing this with a very small baby, probably like 4 or 5 months old. And it is easier in a way if you start before that age, just so that this is what they're used to, this is what they know, and it's fun. It's like a little bonding thing. I'm not going to show that right now, but I just wanted to show you one more thing. In Seattle, we did an EC challenge with about 8 families, and it is hard to catch all the wets, but every family that stuck with it was able to start catching all the poops by like 7 or 8 months and just have no dirty diapers for a year, you know, which was also my experience with my son. Starting at 6 months, I would just sit on the toilet with him in the morning when he woke up, and that was it for the day for about 6 months. That was great. Makes it a lot easier to wash the cloth diapers if they're not actually soiled. And so here are some of the ways that families are doing this in Seattle. They have these little top hat potties, we call them, for the very small babies. You can use that while breastfeeding, or very convenient. You could do it, you know, hold it between your knees at night. Then this bigger potty, they kept it on a cart so they could move it from room to room wherever they were. And then this is a little video that I might go ahead and show. I always have trouble connecting my share sound. Let's see if I can do that. Here's a cue. Oh, that far away look. And I don't know if you can hear that.
Good job, S.
Yay! And then you do the pee pee in the potty. Okay, so that was fun. So it does work. It's not all babies love it. It's kind of a little bit of a personality thing sometimes, or it might be any number of factors, but I have to say most families find success at least with the poop, and if they don't take it on as like a really intense challenge, and if they just try it and see what they can do with it, and they have some support to kind of remind them to keep trying and keep exploring that, they find it really nice. It's like less diaper rash, more communication with baby, like just this awe that you feel like, wow, they can do that at this age is so crazy. So that's been really good. Oh, there's my oven. Okay. I also went down to the Somali Community Services of Seattle, and the women there were really great in sharing what they knew about diaper-free childcare. And they said, you know, in Somalia, our mothers didn't have diapers. They used their old dresses or scarves, or in the countryside where they're farmers, they might use nothing, let the kids run outside, wash them every night. This 2 feet method, and I've heard from folks in India as well, this is similar to what would happen there, although they might be sitting more on the ground and not in a chair. They position the baby on their feet and, you know, keep their airway safe and everything. But it's a way to make sure that your hands aren't getting dirty, the baby's able to safely use the pit toilet or whatever it might be, and keep the, you know, areas that you want clean as possible. So it's an interesting question, of course, what happens to these practices when people immigrate to Seattle? And what I heard some people saying, oh yeah, my babies don't pee at night, or I still, you know, have this knowledge from my family that I use. But a lot of families were kind of like, well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So they were trying to understand, like, how am I supposed to be diapering my children? I talked to a lot of people at the food bank who were receiving free diapers, and the food bank would say, we don't give out diapers after age 3 or after age 5. In West Seattle, it was 5. And so some of the clients were like, well, you know, when they stop giving them to us, then we stop diapering the children, which I think is really a shame that that is what's getting communicated, that, oh, you have to diaper your children till age 3 or age 5. I think there's so little information and so little discussion about this, and pediatricians might be very much like, oh, whenever they're ready, they'll let you know, and people are kind of waiting for a child-led process, which is really not a natural developmental process the way they think it is, because the natural way would be from birth to be learning about this. So that was very interesting and sort of very unfortunate, I think, from a social, you know, environmental justice perspective, to see that kind of financial impact on families that are just lacking some support in this area. And just things also like people told me, oh, well, in India or in Somalia, we had tile floors. And so we could let the kids, potty train at home and wipe it up easily. And it was very sunny and things would dry quickly. And here, a lot of the apartments are carpeted. And so there are a lot of roadblocks like that, which I don't think people are considering. Like maybe if we gave families tiled apartments, they would be able to save hundreds of dollars a month on diapers. I don't know, something to consider. So in terms of timely and effective potty training, we've been teaching families to start between 18 to 30 months, so between 1.5 and 2.5 years of age, when kids are still very much into pleasing you. They don't have their little independent 3-year-old mind yet. Teach them bare-bottomed, and then communicate with everyone that this is what we're doing. We're getting rid of the diapers. We're helping, supporting them in learning what's happening in their body, how to notice it in time, how to get to the potty in time. It should be just, this is what we're doing now. I'm here to help you learn. You're still learning. You're going to pee on the floor. Sometimes that's part of the learning. And really not putting them in pull-ups, not putting them in tight underwear, just letting them go commando under some elastic pants for 1 or 2 months is a great way to get it done in 2 months and 3 months instead of in 9 months. And maybe when they get good at it, the nice cartoon underwear can be the reward. We don't want to use M&Ms or stickers because this is not, a game. This is not, they're going to start demanding more and more rewards every time. So that's all I have for you right now. I'm going to stop and, let Madeline have a turn and answer your questions from there. Thank you.
Awesome. I think I can just screen share my slide. Let's see. Here we go. I'm assuming you all can see that. Just let me know if you can't. My presentation ties a little bit in with Julia's, more so in the end. So just bear that in mind. But my name is Madeline. I'm from UW Recycling. We are part of campus, and today we're going to tell you a little bit just about waste sorting at the University of Washington. I'll get in a little bit into what that means. So just to clarify, for UW Recycling, what we do on campus specifically is we manage all recycling, compost, and garbage vendors on the UW Seattle campus specifically. We collect garbage and recycling across UW Seattle campus as well. We arrange internal and external waste containers. So if you see, containers anywhere at UW that collect garbage, recycling, batteries, that's all us. We manage that. And then we also provide on-site training and presentations to campus groups or even classes that are interested in learning more about how we can manage our waste the best possible way. So today specifically, I'm going to talk about this waste characterization study we did in 2018. We did another one of these, I believe, in 2003. Just to clarify what a waste characterization study is, that is where we collect everything that is generated on campus for a little bit, and garbage, recycling, compost. We then gather it all together. We sort it by location and see just kind of how we're doing. Like if we're recycling what should be recycled or composting what should be composted. In this study specifically, we had 88 different material types. Diapers were one of them. As a broader, sorry about that. As kind of a broader look at the entire campus, we found this to be our diversion rate, and diversion is just anything that we throw away that's not going into the landfill. So if you compost something, that's waste diversion, or if you recycle something, that's also waste diversion. So right now we actually divert about 61% of our waste across the entire campus, which is really awesome. If we sorted everything perfectly, we would actually have an 83% possible diversion rate. And I'll get a little bit more into this during the presentation, but most of that is that we could actually be composting more than we do currently. So for this specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit more about housing and food services specifically. So kind of on campus residential areas where people actually live on campus. We actually collected around 8,000 pounds of garbage or not of garbage, just of material for this waste characterization study. What we mainly found is that 79% of the material disposed of as garbage in housing is actually compostable, recyclable, or specialized recycling. So there's definitely an area of improvement there, which can be seen across the campus. Just looking into that a little bit more, our main areas of where we could improve is that food soiled paper, so like greasy pizza boxes or napkins, or just food in general is typically being thrown in the landfill or even the recycling and not in the compost. So that would be a great opportunity of improvement for waste diversion. Just to expand a little bit more about that, if all paper thrown in campus housing garbage was actually recycled, housing food services would save about $14,000 a year, which could be diverted back into getting better infrastructure. If all of campus housing's food waste was composted instead of landfilled, about 1,200 tons of compost would be generated. And just to put that into perspective, that's like producing 1 million apples energy-wise. So definitely makes a huge impact. And again, we're talking about housing and food services specifically. So campus-wide, it's even greater. And just to kind of put that more into perspective of how obtainable this is, if every resident composted 1 more banana peel a week, that would be increasing the compost rate by 15%. So it's definitely doable and definitely something worth looking into. Kind of how we've been addressing these findings is through a couple ways. First, I'm going to talk about access. You may notice on campus that we've been adding more and more compost bins. Originally, our waste sorting methods about 20 years ago was just having landfill and recycling because that's what we knew how to do at the time. So we've just been going through the entire campus and adding compost bins, as well as these handy signs that I have down here, just showing very specific items on campus that we normally see and where they belong and a little bit of why. I also wanted to point out these bins to the, I believe it's your right on the slide. It is in high traffic areas on campus. This one I think specifically is in the library. We also have them in places like Mary Gates Halls. There's places where people gather in large numbers. And if you notice, the landfill is particularly smaller than the recycling and the compost. And that's literally us trying to get better access to make sure we can actually collect everything that's being composted and recycled, just because we do make more, we do generate more items on campus that can be composted and recycled. So it's a good reflection of what we're trying to do and what's possible. I also want to talk about awareness. Part of our job is doing recycling and waste outreach, a little bit like what I'm doing right now, even though it's a little more specific to just this project. But I just wanted to point out a couple things we do. There's a lot more. Right now we have a course that just got put up for staff members at the university, just teaching them exactly what is recyclable, what is compostable, what is garbage, why it's important. Really fun little class. You can see from the middle picture, we used to teach classes at the U as well. So if faculty members wanted us to come in for a class, we could go in and teach the students a little bit, mostly focusing on composting. Now we actually do that virtually, which is really cool that we could transfer over to that sort of environment. So we definitely still teach those classes. For addressing students that come to the U specifically that are new, we've started working with first year programs, just explaining what exactly we're trying to do and how to sort your waste a little specifically, and mainly where you can go for more information, just because there is so much that happens on campus and we want to make sure you can find where you want to put an item as soon as possible. We also post a lot in the UW Sustainability blog. This is just a little post that we had last July for going plastic free. We do this every July where we have something called Plastic Free July, where we just try to see how much plastic we can reduce, and our team members try this ourselves and we report our findings. Which brings me to the last main point, which is waste reduction. Even though it's really important to make sure that we are putting material in the recycling when it should be recycled or the compost when it should be composted, it's mostly important just to make sure you're reducing what you're creating in the first place. Something that we like to do for housing and food services specifically is this thing called Scram. So every year, and then, you know, in the summer also, students move out of the residential areas, and moving out is very stressful. And a lot of times you have these like big items or these items that you don't need anymore because you're moving away, or you just don't know how to transport it. So the natural inclination is to put those in the landfill. However, we have made sure that we're always there and collecting what people might not be able to take care of themselves and make sure it goes in the right location. So the photo, I believe it's on your right, is just kind of what that looks like. We collect lots of toiletries, we collect like furniture, we've found some really wacky stuff, and we make sure it goes to places like the pantry or the food bank or even like Goodwill sometimes. So just making sure those items actually complete their life cycle and don't get thrown away prematurely. We also like to plug UW Surplus a lot. They kind of do this all the time where they take items that the university purchased and can't use anymore, and they either can fix them and give them new life or sell them back to the community. So again, just making sure that life cycle is completed. Us specifically, we like to kind of help people get like their green lab certification if they're in a lab, or office certification if they're in an office, or support paper reduction. So we really just try to be a resource for anything people are looking for, just to kind of reduce their footprint in the first place on campus. That's all I really had for you today on that. Again, the waste characterization study is pretty complex. So we're always happy to answer more questions about it, and there's always more to look into. So thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. That was super interesting. So if any of our audience members have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat.
Oh, I also just wanted to mention a little bit that what Julia's doing is really important, again, because it kind of aids to that whole waste reduction idea. While it's important to make sure that we're not composting disposable diapers, or, you know, they're going in the landfill and not contaminating the recycling, just not making them in the first place makes a much bigger difference.
And also if folks want to ask questions by unmuting and going on video, so we have a little more personal interaction, feel free. Yeah. People are shy today.
I have a question, if I may. Yeah. Thanks for both your presentations. I found them really interesting. My first question to Julia, based on what your experience was, what do you see the possibility for scaling up such initiatives, and how would you go about it?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think what we see now is we did a post survey, mostly of the folks who interacted with our project and learned about elimination communication and tried it and so forth. And their reasons for what's making potty training the hardest changed. It used to be that diapers are convenient, or we didn't know how to train, or all these things. And now afterwards, the biggest roadblock is actually daycare or preschool. And so we are now working with to do more outreach to daycares and preschools to see if they can better support what the families are trying to do. I should say, you know, it is still possible to do what I was talking about, elimination communication. If your child is in preschool or in daycare where they're not supporting it, you can still, the baby, it's just like if they speak English at school and Spanish at home, they can kind of do that with pottying as well. And we have families who've done that, and their babies like become totally diaper free at 16 months or something. And then, you know, if your child is never wetting their diaper, pretty much the daycare will be like, well, okay, I guess that's fine. And, you know, they can work with you better. But that's been quite challenging. It's been quite challenging to engage those places, and I think there's so much regulation on them. I mean, they're not even allowed to empty the disposable diaper. They're not even allowed to put the waste, the human waste, into the toilet before they throw the diaper away, which is what people do at home. For some reason, that's not in their rule book. So I think the daycares are very concerned about compliance and sanitation and things. So it's been interesting this year with everyone being home, a lot more kids not being in daycare, that we've actually seen a lot of interest in our potty training classes. And people have said, like, oh, if somebody was actually home with the kid for a month, and it just made all the difference. So I think more outreach to daycares, or possibly if, King County can work with the regulators to make that more comfortable for them and clarify that you can do cloth diapers at daycare, you can do potty training where they're not wearing a pull-up at daycare. I think that would be a really big help. And other than that, I think just publicity. And honestly, we were very disappointed that West Side Baby would not talk to us. Maybe we just didn't approach them the right way, but I think if we can try to get rid of this tension between providing diapers because there's diaper need and providing potty training information. And of course, you have to be very careful you're not shaming parents. They do what they have to do. I mean, obviously, we're not saying people shouldn't use diapers, but at the same time, it's a shame to have people miss out on some opportunity just for lack of information and lack of training. And you don't have to force them to do it, but at least give them the information, give them a chance to learn about it and try it. And so I think pediatricians could also play a role, and we've tried a little bit to reach out, but it's sort of been hard to break in just as a small, cloth diaper company and a small project. So a lot of avenues there to work together, I think.
I have a follow-up, if I may. I was previously involved in a research project prior to joining King County, where it was more about incontinence care. So it was mainly about elderly and people who had issues. And part of the issue there was these solutions where the producers of diapers, because they wanted certain public contracts, if you produced a high quality diaper that was really good and everything, it was difficult to compete by price. But if you could show that you use less diapers than your competitor that cost less, there was an incentive that you could get the producers actually to come in, give training, and a lot of the healthcare professionals actually weren't really properly trained on when is a good time to use diapers and all the techniques that you mentioned. Do you see a role for them? Because I would love to do more here at King County, and our waste characterization studies show it's about up to 10% of what goes to landfill is either human or animal poo wrapped in different stuff. But I'm afraid that from the county's perspective, people might see us, no pun intended, as a nanny state. I know that would be okay in Europe, but here, not well received.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am very curious, especially after some data that Madeline shared with me from the proportion of diapers in the waste stream at UW. Like when I saw the figure of 8,500, I just thought baby diapers, but actually I have no idea what proportion is baby diapers versus individuals with disabilities or elders. And, part of our project originally was to reach out to elders, and we thought, oh, elders will know how to do earlier potty training, maybe they can help out. And every time I talked to elders, they were like, oh, that was so long ago, I don't remember. but now, and then they would start telling me about their own, you know, incontinence issues. And so I think that's actually a huge area to and just one that we haven't touched because I was working with a baby diaper service. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great idea. And I know that there are small companies that make cloth diapers for children with disabilities who are, you know, like throughout the lifespan, people with disabilities. And I don't know, yeah, the medical care in terms of how often do they need to be changed? I don't know. But that would be great if there's anyone who, I mean, it's hard to tell, but if you can measure, like, you know, the waste stream from preschools and neighborhoods versus you know, senior living or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't even know how it's done because I don't know if they buy it through contracts or is it because the system that I know of is that you actually get an invoice on how many diapers you've been using, and actually it boils down to who uses the diapers, and in that way you can actually track, at least for healthcare facilities, and it's a great measurement tool. But that's more like performance-based procurement than it is buying one-on-one.
Sounds promising.
So we have another question here. I believe it's for Madeline. How has UW's recycling rate changed over the last few years or decade?
I will answer that after I answer the question before that. So there was a question about how did the findings of the waste audit compare or expectations, which is a really interesting question because I think when you do this line of work, your expectations aren't that everyone's doing something perfectly or really incorrectly. Your expectation is to just find an area of improvement, which we did with the waste audit. You know, we found that people just aren't composting as much as we might have expected, which I guess can make sense in some ways. Culturally, kind of in the West, it's newer in the sense to compost industrially. Even if you end up going to the university, you might be from another location where composting isn't the same. For instance, at the U, you can compost like meat or bones or dairy, which you can't do in a backyard compost. But because we use an industrial composter, it's actually possible to do that. So just finding little tidbits like that and then figuring out how to relay that back to everybody else, I would say is kind of the core of the waste study. So I would say our expectation was to find something we could improve on, and then we found it, which is really, really cool. In terms of, let's see, what was the other question? Oh, how the recycling rate has changed over the past few years. It's kind of a more complicated question than you'd expect. I think people want to see a linear kind of display of we're recycling more and more, but because of what's happened kind of in the sense of what our society can recycle or what we even want to focus on recycling, our rates have more changed to like, what do we want to recycle as like specialized recycling? Like for instance, you can't put styrofoam or plastic film in a regular recycling bin. It won't get recycled or could actually damage the recycling that's already in there. And we're very fortunate at the university where if you're a staff member working for us, so you work in a lab or maybe even in just the health sciences building, we actually have collection sites where we can specially recycle those separately as long as we collect them separately. So our recycling rates have kind of more changed in that direction on what can we focus on making sure like it's recycled correctly and where. Our goal is definitely to get closer to that 83%. By 2025, we want more of a reduction in what waste we're producing in the first place instead of increasing our recycling. So just trying to sort correctly, I would say, is more of our goal there. But as always, and I put it in the chat, if you want more specific data than that, feel free to email us and we can definitely get more into the nitty-gritty of that question. And then let's see the chat. I'm just making it a little bigger so I can see what else people have said. Are there any initiatives regarding reusable cups and food containers at UW? That is a really good question. The answer is sort of. Again, I would email us just to get the more specific answers because a student group is actually running that proposal more than we are at the moment, and we're kind of taking a more supportive role. But I think they're piloting it at 2 campus locations right now where you can get a reusable container from there and then bring it back. So it's definitely something that we're interested in, but our focus right now is more just reducing waste in the first place. So that definitely fits in with that, but we'd be happy to talk more about that over email. And then let's see. Okay, yeah, I think that's all the questions. But again, just email us if you ever want to know more, again, the nitty gritties of stuff. But yeah, really excellent thoughts.
Great. Thank you, guys. Does anyone else have any other questions for either Julia or Madeline? No? Well, thank you so much for being with us today, to our presenters and to everyone else who joined in. There are a couple of Earth Day events highlighted on our website, green.uw.edu on the events tab. So feel free to check that out throughout the week, next week, and hopefully we will see you at some of our Earth Day events. Oh, there's the link. Thank you, Damon. Again, thank you to our speakers, and hope everyone has a great day.